Hello, welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. As we're doing this live, I know the presidential debates are coming on, so hopefully you're able to download this. It is available on most major platforms for podcasts, Apple Music. We even have it on Spotify, Stitcher, a bunch of other ones. So make sure, if you usually watch the video, to subscribe to the podcast as well. And as always, check out southboundsports.com. We have most of our episodes are on there. And I think we have links to social media. If not, I'll check it out. Brings me to my first topic, Matt. I tried to put the stream. I've been putting Matt's football streams every Friday night on the website. So if you go there, I got some messages. I didn't have it right up at 7 because I couldn't find it. So you're at Southern Huntington. So I apologize for people that are messaging me. And just so you know, I'm not the one that's recording it. So if there's audio things or issues, I can't help you. So just for people that are messaging me saying hey, this is messed up. If the school that's broadcasting has comments turned off, there's really no way for me to get in touch with them either. So I know that the stream on Friday was bad, but not our fault. I'm just putting it out there so people that want something to do on Friday nights, definitely check out Matt's games. You can watch some quality high school football. So what were your thoughts on the game Friday night?
It was a tough one. It was the first game with a new quarterback, and we just didn't get it done. I mean, putting it very bluntly. We had some opportunities, and when I went back and was watching the film, one of the things that really surprised me was how many times that we had guys that typically follow assignments were missing them. And when you're playing a team that's a bigger school like Southern Huntington, you just can't miss opportunities and we talked as a team, and I said a lot of times the play we're running, who's supposed to block this guy? They'd say the other halfback, and then would play through it, and they would just run right by him, and then that would be the guy that makes the tackle. It's if we make that block, it's an isolated, this guy picks this guy up, there's nobody else to make this play, and we have an opportunity for a big run. And it was one of the major things that we addressed today at practice and just kind of cleaned that up. So I'm hoping that this week we were able to turn things around and really get a tough win on the road.
Yeah, so, you have a couple more games coming up. And as you mentioned, you did lose your starting quarterback. So definitely a learning year for some of the younger guys. But I think a lot of people look past that on the high school level. There's kids playing multiple sports. There's not really any recruiting at this level, so it's tough to have multiple players familiar. You might have to move guys around throughout the year, especially because high school football, some of the enrollment's down across the country in terms of players as a sport, which I'm hoping that some of the changes they make at middle school and things like that, where they're de-emphasizing the tackle and stuff, will get the numbers up. So by the time that they're in high school, because you always see it, and ESPN does a great job of publicizing players that never played until high school, and then were able to earn that scholarship. And I think that's where a lot of people get to high school and they think, oh, I never really played football, so there's no way for me to join now. But those extra numbers can really mean a lot in terms of keeping the sport healthy and having extra players and different things to move around on your own team. So hopefully that the sport can make some adjustments and we can keep going forward, because I talk about the TV ratings and things. They're very important in terms of sports, because a lot of people, they just say, oh, I see this on social media. I see this trending or whatever. And then a lot of people are negative towards football. Football still has the highest amount of viewers, 100-fold. So the sport is in a healthy spot right now. A lot of people always talk about it. Oh, it's like boxing. It's eventually going to go and they're going to have that flip. But for that to happen, you have to have other sports take its place. Football overtook boxing. Baseball was there at that same time. You don't have new sports coming up that are competing right now with football. So this coronavirus stuff is going to be interesting to see, not just on a high school level, but all the way up through what the ripple effect's going to be. Because down here in North Carolina, I don't know if we mentioned it on the show. Their high school, they're not playing until the spring. So those guys, they're losing their entire recruiting cycle because they're going to play maybe, even if they get started in January, they might not have a game before National Signing Day is in. So the colleges are going to be picking them up on their junior tape. There's no way for a high school to work their way into that if their state isn't playing until the spring.
Well, I'm thinking when it comes to stuff like that, though, if some of those guys are on the radar, they still may be able to sign late. Because
I'm sure they can still sign. I wonder how much pressure the coaches are going to put on them to not even play. Because you're already seeing players opt out. I think a couple, I can't remember the names, but I think there were at least one or two that were from possibly California that have already planned on early enrolling at Michigan. So their senior season, it's just not going to happen. By the time they would go, they're going to try to finish up their semesters through extra AP stuff in the summer, which obviously they'd probably pass if they're planning on just enrolling on the Christmas deadline. And I think Michigan had 10 guys over the past couple of years do it. I mean, I could be way low on the numbers. It might have been 10 in a year, but the schools that are doing that, the early enrollment stuff, those kids, they're just going to miss that high school year.
And if you're drawing that type of attention, then yeah, it definitely makes sense to opt out so that you're not risking injury to go play at the next level. I think the guys that could be affected are the guys that are on the bubble, but I think that there's enough time that they can put the film together and the schools have the opportunity to sign them. I think that the difficult thing is going to be trying to make that, when they go to offer a player, they may have a little bit more leverage to say, we're offering you, if you're not going to take it, we got to move so that we can get the rest of our roster spots filled.
And on the other side, too, a lot of the recruiting trips and things like that happen are usually you get a player on campus to come see a basketball game or see that campus environment. Now coaches can actually go and scout them because they'll be playing at that normally dead period. So it'll be interesting to see. But good luck going forward and the rest of your games. We'll be checking in. And like I said, go to southboundsports.com. And I usually have the latest episode up at the top. And then we have a section there where you can just watch the game directly on our website and check in on Matt at 7. So if it's not there, just check back. I'll get it up whenever I find them. The home games will usually be easier because they're going to be on CKTV. So you can find them and favorite them on YouTube.
And here's the other thing with that is this Friday, our game is at Juniata Valley, and they do a similar broadcast for their games. So I think the video and audio quality will be much improved for that. And then great news for the Bulldog supporters is that we got a 3-game homestand after that. So if you're not available to come to the games, you can definitely be able to watch from CKTV, and our AV team does a phenomenal job of broadcasting games.
Very cool. So yeah, definitely check that out, and good luck this week, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, our next big topic, NFL. Normally I'd be celebrating the Steelers going up 3-0, the first time since the year they lost to the Packers in the Super Bowl, starting the season 3-0. I mean, we've seen some blunders, that Browns tie to start the season, some other bad games. And so now they're in a good spot, but my fears are coming alive because the Tennessee Titans hit with the coronavirus. They canceled practice today. The Vikings also canceled practice. They're going to kind of wait and see. I don't know what's exactly going to be the NFL's plan, but right now they've told the Steelers to be prepared to play. It's a Sunday game. It's a 1 p.m. game on CBS. So it's not like there's extra leeway of okay, it's a Monday night. And luckily it's not the Thursday night game. Because if it was Thursday night, I would assume they would be canceling it. And I don't even know if they've had any other backup plans where if it's canceled, you can't really move games around this late. So I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if it's going to actually, if it spreads through one of these teams, if they cancel a game, and then what happens? Do they make it up? Because I don't think they have the weeks built in. If you don't have a common bye week, which I think is going to be very, very slim chances, then is it just canceled? So we're going to have an uneven year? That's what we're going to find out, and it's on the clock right now. So do you have the same fears I have, Matt?
Well, I just think that there's a chance that they would shut that down, and then, like, if they do end up doing it, it'll just be where they have lopsided games played for multiple teams. I don't know if that's going to affect the way things are going into playoffs, but I think, like, when you're looking at how college football is playing out, you have teams right now that they're running out of limited times to make games up and different things that you could be looking at possible weeks lost.
And not to be negative about it, but this couldn't have happened at a better time for the Steelers. This Titans game, you're on the road. They're a solid team. I've had this as a loss for the Steelers. I thought the Texans were going to be a tough test going in, so luckily they pulled that one out. If the Titans were to cancel, it's not a bad game to lose, because then you're still 3-0 playing the Eagles, followed by the Browns. So you could you're eyeing 5-0 right there. And so you're taking out your tough challenge on the road and going right into 2 more home games. So that's one positive way to look at it. I also wonder if they're going to take the college approach, like you said, because there's so much money at stake. Maybe they don't cancel. Maybe they just fill in with whatever bodies they have. As long as it's enough to field a team, they can bring in roster guys. A lot of NFL teams we talk about every year on the show, how they all run similar schemes. They have guys available that have probably been around the team that they can bring in. I don't know about how feasible it would to get them cleared from the coronavirus stuff to be able to play. But look at this past weekend, Virginia Tech, they were down like 20 players. They played NC State, and they destroyed them. And you would think, like, oh, that's going to be a lucky break for the Wolfpack here. They're going to get a win against Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech's just going to show up. They're at home, a bunch of raw players, and they took it to the Wolfpack. And I thought, oh, well, here it comes. I mean, NC State was down such a big lead, and I know we normally don't talk about college this early, but I thought that the depth was going to be an issue. They just couldn't stop Virginia Tech's running back. Very similar build to the Titans. I don't know if he's one of the ones named. I didn't see a list of names before we did the show. But if the Titans were to just fill their team with practice players, I don't even think that's really a negative for the NFL. If they want to have all the games count. And then on the other hand, like you said, just have a lopsided schedule. Who cares? Who cares? Didn't they expand the playoffs this year anyway? So
I want to say, yeah.
So if they expanded for sure, then who really cares? Like, it's not a big deal where, oh, we missed the playoffs by this much. Like, you had your chance to win your games. Win the games that you've had. Like Cincinnati starts 0-2-1. If they would go on a run and miss the playoffs by a game, yeah, you have a new quarterback. That's just the way it works. Like, you didn't start the season great. Could you be upset? Maybe. But if things are breaking and it's fair for everyone, where everyone has the same testing rules and everyone's going to do the same exact stuff, I think it's going to be fine no matter what they decide. But this will be the first test to really see, because if you remember baseball, the Cardinals got hit and they struggled for like 2 weeks fielding. And I mean, they were playing every day, so they lost a ton of games early on fielding players. In football, they have built in weeks off. So, like, if you can get through this game against Pittsburgh, your guys might be coming back negative after that on the test, so you might be cleared to play. I don't know. I don't know if the incubation's different for athletes, because normally sometimes they're in better shape, so they fight off sickness better. I don't know. So maybe I'm wrong there, and you still need the full 14 days. But even then, you're only missing 2 games compared to however many. The key is going to be to contain it. if it's going from 5 to 10 players all the way up to like 30 to 40, then you're in trouble, and that's when I think they would cancel the game. I think where they said they were at, was it 11? I'm going to see if they have a thing. They were still trying to decide. 3 players have been placed on the reserve from the coronavirus. I thought they said they had quarantined more people, but maybe I was just adding numbers in my head, because it said 3 are on the quarantine and there were 8 new positive tests, which would be 11. But I think they said some of them were staffers anyway. So 11, I mean, you could fill that with the practice squad. It's just going to be making sure when Thursday and Friday hit that number doesn't double or triple. So hopefully positive. I think the Vikings just did it as a caution. But I think Notre Dame did that earlier.
But I think that's also part of the NFL's policy to be proactive and just shut it down, just to make sure that everyone at least has the 48 hours, and then they'll retest and make sure. Because they said from the Minnesota side, nobody tested positive. So they're just doing it because they're following league protocol.
Well, that's what Notre Dame was doing in the summer, I think. Like, they had a couple guys get it, and so they were just shutting down practice to give everyone quarantine space till they could retest everybody. And then, I think that happened like 3 or 4 times, and then they were able to practice and not miss any time until the latest one, which they said they traced to whatever their food delivery thing they did before the game. So everyone that ate at a certain spot, they came in contact with it from who knows where, a server or something. So, I mean, the testing, if Notre Dame's doing that level of testing where they're able to pinpoint and say everyone that had it was eating this at this time in this location, then the NFL probably has the same exact thing. So I think they would know. But getting off that, because I hate talking about it, it's just the biggest thing right now as we're looking at the Steelers' chances. I would just hate for a great start to the year, and if something like they would just end up canceling, which I think they've already said they're going to try to do the bubble playoffs anyway. So fingers crossed, a healthy Ben, this could be the last hurrah for a chance for the playoffs and possibly a Super Bowl. But the big game last night, Chiefs, Ravens. Ravens couldn't really shut them down. And you would think that Baltimore would have one of the key defenses. And truth be told, I was watching the Stanley Cup at the same time, so I didn't have an exact close watch on the game. But I will say that in terms of the Chiefs right now, looking at a repeat, normally you have 2 things. You have a solid Super Bowl team that is able to compete for multiple years at a Super Bowl, or you win that Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl and lose, and then your team completely craters. Like, you had all your contracts tied up and for that one run, and you've seen that a lot. Like, look at the Falcons. They haven't recovered since their appearance. The Chiefs look like they're set in. And I think just looking at the contracts and stuff that they had last year, you knew that this is going to be a team that's built for a multi-year run, and they're still firing at all cylinders. So they're really scary right now, and I know a lot of people are high on Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't win under pressure. And I'm just saying it. Lamar Jackson hasn't proven that he can win a tight game like that. He hasn't won a playoff game. Everyone keeps saying, oh, this is a preview of the AFC Championship game. I don't think it is. I do not think it is. I think the Chiefs will get there. I don't think Baltimore does. And they need to show me something because, they have a Harbaugh as their coach. He's won close games before, but let's be honest, he's still a conservative coach that in the bigger games, he doesn't let it fly like he does against teams like the Browns. So sure, they can blow the Browns out 38-6 or the Texans 33-16. But once they say, well, the Chiefs are on our level, we're going to have to, keep it close, and then just gets away from them. So those are my notes from that game last night. Do you have any thoughts on that game?
I just think that when you look at the Chiefs, they still have their head coach intact, obviously. They still have their quarterback intact. And the surprising thing is that they still have their offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, the old Bungles running back. And I think when you look at some of the issues that the Eagles are having right now. As soon as they won their Super Bowl, they took Foles, who won the Super Bowl, and let him get signed away. And their offensive coordinator, Frank Wright, went to Indianapolis. So they lost two of their important pieces that led to them winning the Super Bowl in the first place. So I think when you have that kind of level of success, it's able to continue that trend. And I think they are a tough team coming down the stretch.
And that's a good point. And I've said that all along. The Eagles made the mistake of having a Super Bowl winning quarterback and going with the other guy. I mean, the Bears right now, I'm surprised that Foles has bounced around as much as he has. The Bears gave up on Trubisky, which we labeled as a bust whenever they traded up for that pick. I mean, go back and look at that draft and just see how big of a mistake that was for the Bears. But they backed into Nick Foles. As long as he stays healthy, that's a good position for them. And now I think that's going to be a great race in the NFC North, because you have the Bears that are somehow, they're bumbling through. They're bumbling through. You get down real big, you come back, you get the win. I mean, they're 3-0 right now. They're lined up with the Packers to fight for that North Division. I think that's going to be a hell of a race now, because I don't see, unless, like I said, Foles gets hurt, I don't see them changing quarterbacks. And I think Foles is able to take a Bears team like that and get them at new heights. I mean, they're still building their teams like they've been for the past couple decades. And they were close to winning a Super Bowl with what? Rex Grossman, who was their quarterback that year?
Yeah, but they also lost Tariq Cohen for the year with an ACL injury. One of my only productive fantasy running backs.
And, I mean, injuries have been hard this year. And so, like, you have how many running backs down already across the league? The stars. McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Cohen. I mean, these are big guys, and they're all out for multiple weeks, season. And there are other ones just around the league. It's a weird year. And like I said, preseason games, that might be the difference here. Guys weren't able to kind of ease into it, get some light contact at full speed for a series or two. We always joked about it, like, oh yeah, they're only in for a series. So what does it matter? Like, it might matter for some of these older guys to get out there instead of just going from 0 carries directly to 30 carries a game. Like, they might need to ease into it a little bit. And so we'll see if that continues, because that's my theory, is that you're going to get hit twofold, and it's going to suck if you're a fantasy football player, because fantasy, you don't know what's going to happen with the coronavirus. Like, if you have a bunch of players from the Vikings or the Titans right now, like Derrick Henry, you have to be panicking because you're just waiting. I guess same for the Steelers, because if they cancel the game, you're losing it from both sides. So there's 4 teams right there, whoever the Vikings play, that are right now, they're sweating. So, like, what do? Are you picking up random guys on other teams? Like, if you picked a couple guys, like, let's say you're a fan of one of those teams, and you have, like, we play, there's a bunch of people that have, like, 4 Steelers on their team, you'd be done for that week. You might as well just hang it up. Just say, oh, okay, yeah, that's a loss for me. But I think across the league, it's going to be a telling sign. Saints lose again. Speaking of injuries and stuff, I think you're right. I think Drew Brees, I think he's done. We saw it with Peyton Manning that year. They won the Super Bowl somehow. I still am baffled how his rubber arm got them a Super Bowl championship. That's how good the Broncos defense was. That Peyton Manning just had to focus on not throwing interceptions. Like, hey, just don't turn it over. Just eat the clock. Let our defense rest, and we'll keep you in the games enough that we can win. And they won a Super Bowl that way. But the Saints, they're not built like that. They're high-powered offense first. And the division that I thought was going to be the most competitive, now it's just a laughingstock. The Falcons. How is that team not blown up? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't get it. Like, we joked about it all offseason. Like, they did nothing to boost their defense. They knew the defense was an issue. Their offense is scoring points, and they can't stop anyone. It's like they get these leads, and it's just like they're reliving their Super Bowl loss over and over.
And that's exactly what it is. It has to be painful to be a Falcons fan. Like, you see the Bears, they put in Nick Foles, and you have to think, man, that they have a Super Bowl winning quarterback on their bench to come in and beat us. Like, well, how else could you take that? Because I thought, well, there's no way they're going to get a win. They really blew the Bears out. Maybe the Bears defense is not good. And then just like that, game's over. Loss. So it's like, I mean, Matt Rule, I thought, wow, he must be crazy for jumping into this division. And he's not in a bad spot right now. 1-2, right there behind Tampa Bay, which has Tom Brady. And you think no matter what their record ends up being, I mean, throw out that first weird loss where he had the 2 turnovers. They're rolling right now. And so Atlanta, I don't see how they don't turn it around at least and go close to 500. But then again, the defense is so bad. They could lose to anyone. Like teams that are defense first, like the Broncos and the Vikings, they might be able to just outscore. But they play the Packers this weekend. I don't see how that's not ugly. Aaron Rodgers has been playing, as much as I knock the guy, Aaron Rodgers has been playing lights out offense. I had the point differential here. They're up 37 point differentials in favor. I think that's the highest in the league. No, the Colts are at 39. But they've already scored 122 points on the season. I don't think there's another team other than Seattle that has broken 100. Not even the Chiefs. And the Seattle, they're just getting lucky because Russell Wilson right now is on fire. So they have a 3-0 start. And I mean, I saw a thing. I didn't realize that he hasn't had an MVP vote in his entire career. Like, Russell Wilson is good. Didn't they win 2 Super Bowls?
Yeah, in spite of him.
But he's been awesome. I don't know why you're laughing, Matt. He has one more. I'm pretty sure he won 2, didn't he? I know they crushed the
Broncos.
The Broncos, because my brother's a Broncos fan, so I watched that game with a big smile on my face with him. Just the entire time. It started with that safety. I'll never forget. Peyton Manning walks out there. The snap just goes straight by him, and they safety him, and they never turn it off. Oh no, they only have one, and it was that one. Did they lose? Oh yeah, they did lose that one. That was the they had the lead and they threw the interception in the end zone against the Patriots. That's the other one. So they should have 2. I don't really think that's in spite of him. That was a great play on defense. They broke that up. So I take it back. They have 1. They have the same amount as Aaron Rodgers. But again, no one ever talks about Russell Wilson like that. They never talk about him on the same level. So I'm not really sure what's going on with voters. That right now, I saw a poll and they were talking about Lamar Jackson being in a competition with like Patrick Mahomes for MVP. Their numbers aren't even close to Russell Wilson right now or Aaron Rodgers. Like, those 2 teams are putting up points. So what are you looking for? So that's my last thing I had. Do you have anything else for the NFL stuff?
No, I was just giving you a hard time. I do think Russell Wilson's good, but I think what has kind of overshadowed him is the fact that at times the supporting cast has been so poor with their offensive line play that it was tough to watch Seattle. Like, to even see how are you going to win a game, because it was like if it wasn't Russell Wilson single-handedly doing it, it wasn't getting done. Because their running game was only averaging like 2 yards a carry or something ridiculous. Like, it was a terrible run game that they had, and they didn't really have the weapons. But now it looks like they've stocked up enough that they can make it work.
Well, their weapons, they really haven't made any moves to try to get him help on offense. Like, they had Tyler Lockett. So he came in, and I think he was more of like a special teams guy, Lockett, as I choked on his name. He's been really turning it up to the point where he's also now their deep threat. / go-to receiver. And it's like him or bust. And then it's just Russell just spreading the ball around. So I'm not sure if that's going to be sustainable, but because it's well balanced, I just don't see an issue with them out there. That division, though, is taking over the mantle for the most competitive division in the NFL. Everyone right now has a winning record. Rams, Niners, Cardinals, and Seahawks. The Niners battled back after losing their first one and having me make fun of them. So they probably listened to this and they thought, we're not going to do the 1 year and bust. We're not going to be a Falcons team. Or hell, even the Rams. The Rams struggled after their Super Bowl appearance. But we'll see. I think it's going to be a good battle for some of these divisions going in. And then my last note. How is the NFC East awful every year? I know like the Eagles got that Super Bowl win and the Giants have had 2 in the past decade or so. So they have success at the top level. But every team in that division has a losing record. It's like the Cowboys, you're not in a position, like you're supposed to be taking that next step. Take the step and get to where you're supposed to be. You bring in Mike McCarthy as head coach. You're thinking, okay, we're going to go ahead and make some strides. But then it's like, I know you're playing tough teams, like they lost to Seattle. So, I don't know. But that division, it always seems like one team gets in with like a 9-7 record. I might be wrong on the stats, but there's never a team that's like super highly competitive. But yet everyone always talks about them. Just annoying. So, anything else? I know I kept going long on the NFL.
No, that's it.
All right, I had Tampa Bay. Like I said, I watched the Cup last night. And I know we haven't really been following hockey a lot because they had the weird cutoff year. And then they competed with the football, which is never really going to help them win any viewers. But like I said earlier, I would have been shocked if Tampa Bay would have lost the Cup. They looked like the best team in the playoffs. They were on a run. I know Dallas got hot there at the end, goalie-wise, and they had the lead in the series for a while, I think. I can't remember how the game breakdown went. But it was 3-2 last night. Tampa Bay were able to get it done. I really don't know. The one thing that annoyed me that the announcers kept saying, like, they kept patting the NHL on the back saying, this has turned out to be a great event. Everyone was everyone didn't think the NHL would be able to pull it off, but they pulled it off. It's spectacular here. And I thought the exact opposite. Not having fans was awful. Like, I can watch, like, the Chiefs game and, like, Kansas State and, like, college football and them. They have fans in the stands. Even if it's not that many, it makes a difference. Because you can tell whenever, I forget what game I was watching, they had like the fake fans pumped in late, like delayed after the fact. One of the games, I think it was Pitt I was watching, they had an interception. There was no reaction. So at first I froze because I was like, oh, was that a penalty? Like, did he actually catch it? And then they kept running. But there wasn't like a fan reaction, and I know it was Pitt. It was again. I think they were playing Louisville. It was a turnover, and I was like waiting for the crowd reaction because normally if you're watching a game and it looks like it's a turnover and the crowd's not cheering, it wasn't a turnover. Like people in the stands, they can actually see what's happening and they like see that the ball bounced. Sometime at the TV angle, you're like down and you can't really tell, but. That's the one thing that stood out to me. And the same thing for the Stanley Cup. Whenever you're down, I know they were down 2 at the end of the game, and you're trying to pull your goalie and do things like that, if there were fans there, it would have been pandemonium. But last night it was kind of just like I was watching a scrimmage. And I don't want to knock the NHL because I'm glad they got the season in. But you delayed it for how long for that? Like, I know there were logistical things, but I still stick to my original thought where why wait till July and wait until August and now we're into the end of September that your cup is finishing up? Like, just shorten the series. The TV ratings went so low for them that what was the point? it's only going to hurt you in future negotiations whenever they say, oh, well, look at this, and then you try to write off and say, well, coronavirus or whatever, and then the NFL throws in 19 million viewers. It's like, well, the NFL didn't have that issue. So it's like, I see the ratings, and I was like, it's down. And I just think hockey's one of the sports that you need fans. I mean, college hockey, I'm a big fan of that. Some of those smaller rinks, they have great crowd, maybe only 10,000 people. I know you couldn't really put that in to a smaller rink because of the regulations and the distancing and stuff, but I just felt opposite. Did you watch any of it?
No, I did not. I honestly, once the Penguins were done, I forgot that they were even playing.
Well, that's probably a lot of people. I mean, because let's say normally in the summer and in the spring, if you don't, I mean, you could watch basketball or whatever. Like, let's say you're a fan of Philadelphia just for the sake of like a 2-sport city team. The Sixers are playing in the playoffs or whatever, and the Flyers are. If they get eliminated, you can kind of flip back to the other sport and say, okay, well, we have another chance for a championship. After that, you probably just flip back and forth because there's nothing else on. I mean, you're competing with what? The softball World Series, college World Series stuff. If you don't watch college baseball or softball, there's really nothing else on at that month besides baseball. I mean, I guess you have that, but even the viewers from that, if it's not a regional game, you're not watching them. And I guarantee people aren't watching every single Phillies game anyway. Stick with my Philadelphia thing. So you can watch the Phillies, but most likely you're going to be flipping back and forth or watching some of the other thing. Now it's like, okay, a Monday night game between the Ravens and the Chiefs, or the deciding game in the Stanley Cup. And I'll be honest, I would assume, I don't think the numbers weren't out yet before we did the show. I'll probably forget to bring them up next week, but look them up later this week. It usually takes a day or two. And just see. I guarantee the Ravens Chiefs on cable beat the NHL Stanley Cup final, the deciding game. So that's my last thing for hockey for the year. We'll see. They're already talking, Matt, about pushing it back. I know the Penguins have been making some moves, but the start of the season, they might push it back until the next year. And then I'm worried that the same thing is going to happen where if you wait too long, try to play 82 games, and then instead of finishing up, September 28th, like let's say you finish your season August something, you're still going to hit into, like if you finish the Stanley Cup final the last week of August when college football starts, I still think you're losing that battle. And I don't see any other way. Same with like the NBA. I don't see any way around it. If you wait until January, how are you fitting in 82 games?
I don't think you are.
I don't think you are either. If you're trying to get back to any normalcy, the only other thing is if you were thinking we're going to finish in July. Because I think you could win that battle. Baseball, really, there's nothing there. But the one thing, next year's an awful year because there's going to have the Olympics. The Olympics were delayed. And if you go into the end of July and August, I think you're not just going to be competing with football at the end. You're going to be competing with the Olympics. It's a losing battle. There's no way I think they can bounce back. Especially the NBA, they already came out and said that they're going to be reducing coach salaries. They're going to be reducing rookie salaries coming in because of the lost revenue. So they've already announced it that it's going to happen. I didn't see a percentage, but the fact that the finals haven't even started and they're announcing it, it's not a good look. It's not a good sign. I feel bad for some of those coaches too, because I mean, you see them go across even just college where everyone's taking pay cuts and things like that. I know they're well compensated, but it also takes a lot of work traveling and stuff, being away from your family. In some of those scenarios, like they get that salary bumps for a reason. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And guys like Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard, he's at the top of a lot of NBA team lists. I'd be shocked if any college guys like that make the jump into the NBA. I mean, unless you're dying to get in the NBA and this is your one chance, like, okay, I can get in now, hopefully stick around, but you're going to be coming in with lower salaries, less job security. You're going to have a crazy year next year. I see them having trouble filling those coaching spots without going through recycled coaches. And that's probably for the NHL too. So that's my non-thing. That's like my sobering thing. For a lot of people that like to watch all the sports, this coronavirus hurt some sports more than others. Baseball will be the next one. We'll see how their season finishes. I know that the playoffs have started. Did the Pirates make it, Matt? No. Did the rest of their division make it? Yes. So every single team in the NL Central, except for the Pirates, made the playoffs. I forgot to put it on the board.
I saw the stat, though, that all of the Pirates' wins came against playoff teams.
Matt, I don't even know what to say. There were so many playoff teams this year. That means they're losing to teams like the Nationals or like Arizona that are barely better than them. That's the sad thing. Plus, to be fair, they play their division more than any other teams, and they're all in the playoffs, so of course all those wins are going to be across. Didn't they sweep the Brewers that one weekend? I mean, the Brewers, how many teams are in with losing records?
That one.
I'm going to try to do a count here on the show. I'll try to do it in my head so you don't hear me counting out loud like an idiot. 2? Only 2, surprisingly, I think, unless I miscounted. So you have...
While you're
Brewers,
counting,
like
just thinking of this too, I think with a lot of these other professional leagues, when you're looking at the NBA, you're looking at the NHL, and you're looking at Major League Baseball, it's how they had to offset their league start times and different stuff because of coronavirus. I think next year, if they go to a modified schedule, it may be enough that they get games in, that they can recoup some of the revenue, but then going into the following season be at a place where they can start on time and they can get back to regular time frames. Because if they try to rush or try to delay and then they're trying to fit all these games in, it's like, what are you waiting for? There's nothing that's saying that you couldn't potentially try to start close to on time, or if you're deciding to delay, don't try to squeeze in a full season or even a half season for that matter. You should be trying to, that if you delay and there's enough data that you're deciding we have to postpone this, then you can't, I feel like a lot of these leagues are trying to have it both ways. They want to delay it to try to see if something's going to happen to take the liability off of them, but then they don't want to miss the revenue, so then they're trying to jam in as much as you can. And you see this in the NFL right now where you have, there's some teams that are allowing fans in the stadiums, and now people are trying to fight back and trying to push to try to get that, so that you're getting that concessions revenue and different stuff in their stadiums.
Yeah, we talked about it. I think some teams were doing drive-through concessions to try to get that. And I think that's a great idea, to be honest, because a lot of people still haven't left their houses or whatever. And I'm surprised more teams didn't do that right away. Like, could you imagine if people were all cooped up, like in May, and like the Pirates or whatever at each of their stadiums? I don't know where all the minor league teams are, but I know they have one in Altoona, Pittsburgh, like all their stadiums, they just started to do like drive-through concessions. Because let's be honest, the parking lots are big enough. At Altoona, they do that Christmas light thing where they have cars go through and cycle through, and they have all the lights and stuff up. But we'll see. Anything else you want to talk about those other sports?
Nah.
All right. Last thing we have coming up, the college football season. So college football, SEC football finally started. Everyone had like a staggered start. And so you went ahead and you had some conferences playing, some other ones not playing. And so you go ahead and you have them finally start. The rankings are a complete mess. They when the season started, it was only the ACC. They said that since the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and I think the MAC announced that they weren't going to have any games, that they weren't allowed to be ranked. And so you went ahead and had that. And then what happened? They flipped it back for some reason. Now that they're supposed to come back in October, they're allowed to be ranked. So let me just go through this quick because I have this up here. And let's see. There are I'm going to do some counting again. There are at least 5 or 6 teams that haven't played a game that are now ranked. So all the Big Ten and Pac-12 teams, I think maybe the Pac-12 only has Oregon in, but they're all back in the rankings. A team like Pitt gets a big ranked win, they drop 3 spots because they have to be jumped by all those schools, including Michigan, that hasn't played a game. You don't even know what Michigan quarterback's going to look like. There's nothing. There's no reason that some of those schools should be ranked. I know they only did it because they didn't want to get to October and have Ohio State completely ranked. But I don't see how someone could go ahead and put Ohio State ranked number 1. 4 people voted them number 1. Haven't played a game. You haven't seen them. Maybe you're looking at the schedule and you say, they're in the playoffs. Oh, yeah, 100%. I see that. But I'm not really sure. I don't know how they can get around it. Penn State's up there. Penn State's ranked. They had them as a top 10 team. We don't know. We have no idea. So the one thing that we do know, Mike Leach can coach. Goes down to Death Valley, takes out LSU. I saw a lot of people, especially mainstream media people, talking about how LSU lost a lot from that national championship team. Coach O should not be losing to first-year coaches. Like, let's be honest. You're saying, like, oh, he lost his quarterback? Mike Leach is playing with a transfer quarterback that he probably didn't even meet him. I mean, maybe he knew him. Wasn't he at Stanford?
Yeah.
Costello? I mean, he was a high recruit at Stanford. But then again, if you're going to complain about that, why the hell aren't you offering him then? Like, why are you letting Coach Leach get him anyway?
Well,
and then they come in.
Before I get on my box here and stand up and celebrate Mike Leach winning, in Coach Ogeron's defense, he did have a new quarterback, and he did lose his defensive coordinator because the old Big Ten legend Bo Pelini was calling the defense for LSU, so no wonder that he got shredded.
Well, I'm saying, too, I know they lost a lot of coaches and stuff, but people are making it seem like Mike Leach has been at Mississippi State for 5 years. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, he's been putting it together. He just got there, too. So it's not just like everyone's just writing that off as, oh, LSU had a lot of transition. Yeah, they're going to be bad this year. It's like Mississippi State was 6-7. It's not like they're recruiting any better than LSU because, newsflash, they're not. Like, they're not recruiting. They're not recruiting at LSU's level. There's zero reason people should be expected for that win to happen, except that Mike Leach came in, and there's one thing that I've been seeing across college sports. Coaching matters, and I think a lot of coaches, whenever they come in, they put in these complex systems that are very hard to make reads. And I mean, I've seen it. I think it's one of the big things that was really hurting Michigan when Harbaugh got there at first. He came from the NFL, and he said, all right, we're going to run these NFL systems. And the kids couldn't handle it because they have all kind of other stuff they're supposed to be learning. I think Mike Leach runs a quarterback-friendly system. Everyone always writes him off for it, saying like, oh, well, it's just his system. It works. Like, you can take a guy that you've just got. It's not like Mike's been recruiting him for years. He's been in a different school. Like, it's a transfer quarterback. He's had very little prep. Because guess what? College football had a weird year this year. And I know they had the extra weeks to practice, but that's not game prep. They didn't even have a warm-up team. They were on the road. He caught a new quarterback on the road,
against the defending national champs
and threw for
them.
over 600 yards.
Yeah, an SEC record in the first game, Matt. The first game. Could you imagine if everyone's like, oh, yeah, Mike Leach, he's a joker. Like, I don't know. Like Florida State, I don't even think they took him serious as a candidate. Tennessee, he wanted to go to Tennessee. Could you imagine if he would have went to Tennessee and beat Alabama like that? People would be going nuts. Now Tennessee, I know Tennessee's ranked right now, which I think they are. They're 1-0 against, like, who did they beat? South Carolina. And it was a close one. Which, has South Carolina been good since Spurrier left? No. And I know Michigan lost him that 1 year, but they're not a good team. So to just have Tennessee ranked is just a formality. Like, if you put Tennessee up against Mississippi State right now, I would take Mississippi State.
But the crazy thing is that Fox College Football put out a graphic that said since 2012, quarterbacks have thrown for 600-plus yards in a game. 7 of them are Coach Leach quarterbacks.
Well, to be honest,
insane.
It is a system thing. I did say that. So it's a system thing, but like as I'm looking at this, the number one thing that you're comparing just across the board is just going to be, are those guys able to make the reads? Because just having that many, would you say 7? Like he has a system that's so perfect that he can just plug in quarterbacks and just have them make the reads. I mean, look at what, like Mahomes, he came from like that similar style at Texas Tech. I know Leach wasn't there anymore, but they were still trying to bring it back after they wrongly pushed him out. And they've been regretting it ever since. I just don't see, like, Tennessee laughed at him. So if Mississippi State finishes with a top 10 record this year, I know it's a crazy year, I couldn't be happier for him. I love Mike Leach. He's not one of the corporate coaches out there that's going out there and, like, doing his coach speak. He's out there posting memes after the game, making fun, saying, like, oh, he couldn't play any NFL teams this past weekend. That's why they scheduled LSU. He's not afraid. And I think that's where the players, they're prepared to play for him. And then you can say, like, oh, he's going to play in the SEC West. His toughest games are, Alabama and Auburn. I know they go to Georgia, but Georgia's quarterback didn't look good. Like, are they going to live up to their lofty ranking, or is that just because it's an SEC East team? Because they're just going to play because their division's so bad that it doesn't matter. Like, it's going to be Georgia versus Florida, and that's it. Like, you can't honestly tell me that Tennessee is going to be competing in that division, and every other team lost opening weekend in the East. So there, Matt, we already have our East champion. It's going to come down to the winner of Florida-Georgia. I mean, Mississippi State, they might not come out with more than or less than 2 losses. Like, they could end up losing both the Alabama, Auburn, and possibly the Georgia game. But with a first-year coach that's able to flip it on, get a signature win on the road first week, I know there weren't fans there, but his system's already in place. And with Costello, that's a highly ranked quarterback coming in that, I mean, he's an NFL guy. He was one of the highest-ranked quarterbacks in his recruiting class when he chose Stanford. That's just going to be like a perfect match. I mean, I honestly, there's nothing else I can say about it, but that's my SEC preview. You're looking at it. I mean, Mac, do you really think Jimbo's going to stop that offense?
No. I don't know. I don't see many people stopping that offense. The only thing that'll stop it is if they run into a spot where the receivers are dropping passes, because a lot of the concepts that we use in our passing game are air raid concepts. So it was kind of interesting. It was something I was messaging my kids on Saturday. Was that, as you're watching, like, you can clearly see a lot of the routes that he's running. It's the same stuff that he was running when he was with Hal Mummy at Kentucky and they knocked off LSU at Death Valley. I mean, he's still running mesh a bunch of different ways. He's still running 4 verts. He's still running stick and snag. they're great. There's a reason that they've lasted as long as they have.
And like, I don't even think that like I'm knocking their recruiting from like the previous coaching stuff. I just really don't think that there was like a lot of highly ranked recruits, and I'm actually going to look it up just to kind of see if they have it overall. Is this the composite? Nah, this is the other one. I think it's this one. So like, yeah. Oh, maybe not. Not sure which one this is. But it's not like they had a top 10 class. Like LSU, they were like 6th overall. I don't even know where Mississippi State is.
Starksville.
I don't mean the location. They were 23rd. I think that's the recruiting class. I thought that they had the entire team out here though. Let me see if I can find one from 24/7 because I know we talked about it on the show like a week or two ago. And so, yeah, I think they do have an updated one. But just in terms of talent, like LSU, yeah, they were 6th overall. So that's a top 10 team. I don't care if you lost a lot of players. That's a top 10 team. So what are you doing in just looking at I don't know. I just hate whenever they try to like downplay it, like, oh, Mississippi State, they're nobody, or they should have just been like there, like he's just been there. But they play Arkansas, should be a win. Kentucky, I don't think Kentucky will stop them. I mean, they could be looking at 3-0 going against A&M and Alabama, which will be a big key stretch at the end of October. And so we'll be looking at that. I don't want to get into Big Ten and stuff yet because we don't even know for sure if they're going to play. Everyone's predicting the coronavirus to get worse. But I think the one thing that a lot of people aren't realizing, like when you look at the old flu seasons, a lot of the flu gets passed at public schools, and a lot of public schools aren't really fully opened yet. So I don't know if that's going to lessen the spread of like the flu or typical season that's coming up, but we'll see. Because that was the one thing that I hated. Why would the Big Ten delay right into the start of flu season? It made zero sense from a standpoint. And then the Pac-12 is doing the same exact thing. They're starting in November, trying to finish right before the college playoff thing because they don't want to be on the outside looking in. So, in the ACC side, Matt, bad luck for the Noles. I have to bring it up now because I thought they were just a paper tiger. And now I don't know what to think. Because they didn't look good. I watched the UAB game. I think it was UAB they played the opening weekend. They came out flat. The game was close. They ended up pulling away late. I think it was like, what they win, 31-14. I'm trying to look at the box score. Yeah, at halftime it was 14-7. I mean, they just didn't look good on the opening week. And of course you can say that, oh, well, you're really not too sure. They get another game under their belt, and then they crushed Florida State. I didn't look at I should just bring it up, the Winsipedia, to try to see if that's one of the most lopsided wins in that series. But what are your thoughts on it?
I think, if you were looking back at some of our older show stuff, when we were talking about Miami, when they hired Rhett Lashley as their offensive coordinator, I said that could be a really good move for them if they get the quarterback in place. And when Derek King signed over from Houston, there was to make an unfair comparison, there was the Cam Newton to Auburn move. Because you have that mobile quarterback that makes that system work. So I think that they do have enough pieces in place that they could make a move in that coastal. But honestly, I just don't see another team from the – I think Pitt has a legitimate shot at making its way to the championship game.
But these are unbalanced things too. Because we looked at that last week. It was hard to see a comparison just in terms of the schedule. And I know that their non-conference doesn't count. So, I mean, you have about half the teams are undefeated right now. It's still early. But like with North Carolina, they only played one game. Yeah, they look pretty good, but it's only one game. Miami right now, I think just in terms of their scoring differential, if they're putting stuff together, like they're going to be a tough team to beat. I still think, I know Notre Dame's been having issues with playing games and players getting sick, but I still think Notre Dame is going to be my pick to play. But now, as you're looking at that schedule going back through, Notre Dame, they still have to play Clemson. They don't play Miami. So Notre Dame's going to, if they lose to Clemson, I don't know what happens in that tiebreaker scenario. Like, well, what if Miami, they play Clemson on the 10th? So they have a week off, it looks like, right for them. But they they realistically could win out. So Miami could lose to Clemson and then run the table because they have like a similar coastal schedule. What if they're sitting there with Notre Dame, both with one loss? What does the ACC do? Do they
Well, you already know with that,
Notre Dame?
With that look on your face, you already know. I hate saying it, but they're going to go with the money move.
But that could have been a huge thing just in terms of Florida State getting back with the new coach, like recruiting wise. An ACC championship appearance for Miami would be gigantic.
But I think Norvell did a really good job up front. That he didn't try to sugarcoat that it was going to be a huge process. And that's why one of his big motivational things is the climb, because he recognizes what type of scenario Florida State's in right now. And I think that it's a shock to a lot of people, because for most people, all they've known is Florida State being successful. I mean, through the Bowden era, there was a phenomenal, unprecedented amount of success that they had and they built. And now that they're in this spot now where they're literally having to rebuild from the ground up, it's a tough process. I think with looking at some of the people that are playing right now, they're signing quality guys and trying to get people into those spots. Like, you're seeing a lot of freshmen, you're seeing a lot of sophomores that are seeing playing time. I think giving him a couple more years and not pushing him out the door, I think he will have an opportunity to turn it around. But my worry is that if Florida State gets too impatient and tries to just continue to put a Band-Aid over what the bigger issues were, then it's only going to create more of an issue. Because when you look at where all this stemmed from, when Florida State won the national championship in 2013, Jimbo Fisher pretty much said, we need the funding, we need the university to put the money up to build the separate practice facility, to build the infrastructure, to commit to the things that you're going to need to commit to compete with the SEC and the Big Ten and a lot of the other major programs in the Power Five. They either neglected or failed to follow through on things that Jimbo wanted, and it led to pushing him out to A&M. The recruiting classes were poor. Came in Willie Taggart, and with Willie Taggart's classes, he was trying to be more optimistic, but in being as optimistic as he was, he also ended up setting some unrealistic expectations. And in doing so, it really just it made the losses that much more noticeable. And now, like, to try to cover up for some of those, it was like they brought some guys in that were questionable recruits, and now you're seeing there's a lot of guys on that roster that are hitting the transfer portal or not playing and being in a spot where they're not, quite frankly, playing the way that you would expect a team from Florida State to play. So it is frustrating, and honestly, I thought that the second quarter of that game was unwatchable. Like, there's not even stuff that you try to watch and think, I kind of like the direction we're going, but it's just, you can't coach effort. And I see the same thing with my kids when I'm coaching, that we preach all the time about the culture and doing the things to be competitive. And you can coach scheme and you can coach technique, but you can't coach heart. And there's just some guys that I think they could lose every game, and as long as they're getting their stats, they're happy, because it's just about the individuals and not the team. And they won't win until they start getting the leaders in the locker room.
And that's a good point because it's tough to build that type of stuff. I mean, bringing up, because I have the talent composite still up, Florida State's at 16, Miami's at 17. Miami doesn't have a full roster, and I think what that means is they've had a lot of turnover because they went through a coaching change too, that they don't have enough. Well, I mean, they have enough players, but they haven't used their full allotment of scholarships. And so that's something too that, like I said, it could really benefit them. They might be able to take this year, if they're able to make a run, get to the ACC championship game, and just have an oversigned class to fill those empty spots, get some early enrollees, and they could be set up to make a run at just dominating the Coastal. Because I really haven't seen a team that stood out in that division. And like next year, if it goes back to the divisions where they were, who's Miami really competing against year in and year out? Pitt. I mean, yeah, Pitt's solid, but Pitt's recruiting is nowhere near where I think they could be. I think Pitt could be recruiting in that top 20 range, and they're just not at this time. So until they're able to go ahead and get that together, it's really Miami, and that's it in that division. You have North Carolina with Mac Brown. They've been recruiting well. But some of those other teams, like they drop off. The one team that could be a thorn in their side would be Virginia Tech. And that's one of the teams that I have marked on their schedule. They only played one game. They were short guys, and they looked really dominant against NC State. But we're going to have to wait and see how that looks going forward. But it's going to be something that we'll keep an eye on. Get some more talk. I think those are the biggest games that we had over the weekend. The LSU upset. There were some other upsets. The last thing I have, because I know we're going long, the Big 12. I called it last week. I said they looked like garbage. They had 3 losses to Sun Belt teams. Kansas State beats Oklahoma. What are they doing? Texas barely survived against Texas Tech. Texas right now is their only chance for the playoff. If I'm being honest, that's it. Because could you imagine, let's say Mississippi State shows up with 1 loss to Alabama. Alabama wins the SEC. Why would they not put Mississippi State in to the playoff? Because they know Coach Leach is going to get viewers, and I'm hoping that something like that would happen. But, like, why would you put Oklahoma in? Oklahoma hasn't shown up in the playoffs. They lose to Kansas State. To me, that's a death sentence. Like, I don't see how anyone in the Big 12, unless Texas goes undefeated, maybe Oklahoma State, the same scenario, going undefeated. But there's only 3 teams left that are undefeated. Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma State. That's it. Matt, they've been playing Sun Belt teams. How do you have your almost entire conference with a loss already 2 weeks in? Most of these teams have only played 2 games, Matt. They're done. It's Pac-12 level bad. I mean, the Pac-12 could come in, and they better be hoping that Oregon runs the table, but they could easily take that spot. I'm just looking at a scenario here where the way things are shaking out, you have an ACC team getting in, an SEC team getting in, and you have a Big Ten team getting in. And then I think you're going to see 2 teams from one of those conferences. Unless Oregon runs the table, or like I said, one of those Big 12 teams do, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're left out again. And it would probably be SEC team. But like I said, what if that scenario comes where, because we talked about the ACC championship game, what if Notre Dame says no? Because then they're in the playoffs. If they lose to Clemson in the regular season, that's their only loss, and they say, you know what? Let Miami play in the ACC championship. We're only doing this because of the coronavirus. Let's just put our 1-loss record up against everyone else that's going for the playoffs, because they're going to pick Notre Dame. Playing in the ACC championship is just a fool's errand if they lose to Clemson again. Because you only play that game as if you're saying, okay, we're not playing Clemson, and we can win this thing. If they're playing Clemson again, they already lost to them, why volunteer for that? I could just see them saying, hey, we don't really have a good tiebreaker, but since we're just like an auxiliary member, we're just going to go ahead and step back and let Miami take it, and we'll just wait for the playoff selection. Because that's what I would do. That's my final thought. That's my final bell thought. Notre Dame is going to get into playoffs, Matt.
Oh, I hope not, because they'll end up losing by 40 again.
Not if they get lucky. It's all about matchups. It's all about matchups, Matt.
Well, I'm just excited that we have a season to be playing. I think it would be interesting. I think there's a lot of football to be played, and when you look at how things are shaping up, that it will naturally run itself out. If they're playing a mostly ACC schedule, at some point you're going to see the teams thin it out on their own, and you'll have more than likely Clemson will be at one end, and you'll have Notre Dame or Miami just to see which team's standing at the end, and hopefully we'll see another nice playoff run.
All right. Anything else you got for the final bell?
That's it.
All right. Thanks for listening. My audio might have dropped out. My mic and stuff, we've been having a storm. I don't know if the power's going in and out, but I tried to go to my backup stuff. So it looks like we didn't lose connection. I'm not really sure. My Facebook froze. But if anything happened to the stream, we'll just put up whatever. Like I said, make sure you're downloading the podcast because we'll be able to save whatever we can and just put it on the podcast there. So as long as we're recording, we'll have something to put out for you. But thanks for listening. Go to southboundsports.com. All our episodes are there anyway. But we do go Facebook Live on Tuesday nights around 9 o'clock. I know I picked a bad night up against the presidential debates, but we'll see going forward if they're going to have them Tuesdays. We might just pre-record or something. So if there's anything you want us to talk about, hit us up. Like I said, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.